Hi, I'm Doug Stapleton, Associate Curator of Art with the Illinois State Museum, and I'm here to talk to you about stillness. This exhibition, Stillness, is curated out of the Illinois State Museum's permanent collection. It was scheduled to be on view at the Christopher Art Gallery at Prairie State College this summer of 2020. Unfortunately, with the current health crisis with the coronavirus, and with many museums and galleries closed, and all of us staying home to help save lives, this was not possible. But we wanted to put together a virtual tour of the exhibition so that we could present some of the ideas and the pieces that would have been seen in the physical exhibit itself. And to also talk about what is a still life. What is a still life? By definition, a still life is the depiction of common objects, natural or man-made, arranged in a deliberate composition. Now, this is the driest of definitions. For artists, though, a still life is much more than just a depiction. It is a way to reflect something about ourselves. Still life is inherently a contradiction of terms, a paradox. It is life, all that is moving and changing around us, made still. The artist chooses a moment to capture in their still life. It might be a personal moment, or a larger social or political event. It can also be an allegory of larger concerns like the passage of time, or love, or death. The artist can make time stand still in hopes of drawing us into that moment as a witness, a participant, with a hope that in the stilled moment we may reflect on our own experience, our own memories, our day-to-day encounters, and the small, ordinary gestures of grace, beauty, and abundance within our own lives. Think about how we surround ourselves with still lives of our own making. We cook a meal. The ingredients are set aside for cutting. Bowls and pans eventually pile up in the sink waiting to be cleaned. We set the table for dinner, dishes, silverware, something to drink, some flowers perhaps on the table. We empty our pockets at the end of the day and toss the contents on a nightstand or dresser, wallet, keys, change, receipts. All of these, if you were to stop and look at them, are a kind of still life. They are a moment in time in our daily life. This exhibition brings together painting, drawing, print, and photography created over the past 100 years. The artists selected have rendered their moments, real or imagined, in a variety of artistic approaches, from precise realism to degrees of expressive gestural exuberance up to near abstraction. All of this is done to singular effect, and that effect is to involve our senses, to capture some idea of the emotional, subjective, even metaphysical presence of the things around us. It's this tension between representation and abstraction, between holding on to the real and letting go into the imaginary realm, that is key. It shuttles us between this quiet moment and the energetic, often urgent measure of that experience of that moment. Flowers. Flowers are the staple of the still life genre. By definition, a floral still life is a man-made arrangement that freely invents composition and atmosphere beyond illustration. And that's what's important here, beyond illustration. It's this composition and atmosphere that allows flowers to be a storyteller. And what is the story that flowers tell? There are two examples we can look at from art history briefly. The Dutch in the 16th and 17th century perfected a genre of still life painting called vanitas paintings, or vanity paintings. These were still lives, oftentimes an enormous bouquet of flowers that might include a withered bloom, or a skull, or perhaps an hourglass, or some symbol that talked about the bounty and wealth of the world and the fleeting impermanence of life, both at the same time. In the 19th century, the Victorians developed a very complex coded language for flowers, through which they could pass on emotions or sentiments to each other. Roses were for love, violets for modesty, poppies for eternal sleep, and of course, forget-me-nots for forget-me-not. It was an emotional drama played out in a vase of blooms. The artists that paint flowers in this exhibit take a more modern approach in that they paint the still life for its own sake. That is, to give us a quiet domestic moment. For example, Carolyn Plockman's painting from 1998, Persimmon and Marzipan, gives us a vase with flowers and some other objects on a table, something that she probably would have seen in her living room. The approach is more direct, less emotional or coded. It's actually a very quiet, delicate moment in time. In contrast to Plockman's quiet, observed realism, we have these two pieces from earlier in the 20th century by two artists who were interested in that dynamic tension between representation and abstraction. On the left, we have Flora Schofield's print from 1940 of sunflowers in a vase, in which she's reduced the composition to its sort of broad green leaf, bright yellow petals, and rounded black seed head, giving us the most basic information in form of shape and color. On the right, we have Manuel Dawson, who has taken this sapling in a pot and created a strange, otherworldly creature, you might say. His early explorations with abstraction had a feeling of an interest in the primitive, in the kind of naive, a sort of primordial essence of the shape and form of the composition. We're looking less at a pot and looking at its perhaps energetic body. This painting by Mary Agnes Yerkes is in striking contrast to Dawson's more primitive subject. Both paintings are from around the same time. This is undated, but likely 1910-19 teens. And Yerkes, like Schofield and Dawson, is interested in how to capture some emotional or energetic quality of her subject, which she accomplishes through her brushwork. This painting has all the bravado of American post-impressionism. Her subject, this peony, feels more like a figure, like a dancer, alive, moving across the canvas. Realism. Realism is the attempt to make art resemble life. This is done through accurate depiction, attention to detail, rendering the subject as real and whole as possible. We take for granted how easy it is to reproduce things of the world with photography. But prior to its invention, draftsmen, painters, printmakers were the ones who were depicting and distributing information about the world. With photography's invention, artists could then move beyond depiction into more the realm of description. And this is where you can get much more subjective. Artists in this section of stillness have taken a realist approach, but they have heightened, they have pushed, they've extended our perception of what reality can be. So how do they do this? Through ramped up optical effects, through the hyper-real, through close-ups and dramatic lighting and shifts in scale. These are all strategies that engage all of our senses, not just our eyes, and make the things of the world into something altogether strange and unusual. The realist artists in this exhibition all have very distinctive ideas of what is the real. We have Stephen Corelli and Albert Wong, Two artists working in a fool the eye technique in which we think that the image exists in real space. Corelli's painting Hardware Store Abstraction is an image of tape on a piece of cardboard, and we can sense the undulation of that cardboard and the edges of the tape. Wong's painting of pears sitting on a ledge feel as if they're built back into the wall itself and not painted on a piece of canvas. Jeanette Sloan's print, Red Shift, is an eye-dazzling photorealist composition. She's interested in reflection and distortion, and we're not sure what is cloth, what is its reflection, and what is the rounded form that the cloth is reflected off of. It's all a little bit confusing. Eric Wirt, in his drawing Tall, takes a small cactus and turns it into a giant monster. His inspiration is the 1930s, 40s black and white horror films and gangster films. And through a shift in scale and dramatic lighting and a fine shading technique, he's able to take this tiny cactus and make it into a large and threatening creature. Nancy Hild has a series of paintings of inflatable toys, often piled together in such a way that you really can't determine where one begins and one ends. And in her attention to the detail of the surface and the creasing of these plastic toys, she moves it from a photorealism into more of a flat abstraction, almost a cartoon quality like a Japanese anime film. Daily Bread, Plain Abundance. Here we have Messina Barton and Alejandro Romero, who give us two interpretations of the humble loaf of bread. Both artists interpret the bread as an allegory of plenty, but through very different means. Barton's image on the left is a monument. It's rooted in solid rendering of Midwestern regional painters like Thomas Hart Benton and Grant Wood. Barton's loaves are piled high on a simple painted table, majestically rising above the horizon. It is a symbol of the bounty of a verdant land. Romero is influenced by Mexican and European expressionist and offers us a feast brimming with life. In his print, the feast is centered on a basket of bread surrounded by corn, vegetables, fruits, and a host of wild creatures. He connects food, he connects our daily bread with the lively force of nature. These are some of the highlights from the Stillness Exhibition. The exhibition was curated out of the permanent collection of the Illinois State Museum. The Illinois State Museum is located in Springfield, Illinois, the state capital, and the arts section has about 4,000 objects in the collection by artisans, artists, and makers who have had a significant history with the state of Illinois. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. It's been my pleasure to put it together for you, and I hope that this will help you to come to see the objects that surround you, the objects in your day-to-day life, as an expression of who you are, of what it is you love, what makes you comfortable, of what it is you aspire to, of objects that help to tell your own story. Thank you.